All right, here's the opening joke. Ready?
Yep.
Yeah.
Elon Musk. That's a good one.
Alex, I'd like to ring in. What is Destroyer of Twitter?
So, how are you guys doing?
Good.
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 Doing well. How about you?
I can't complain, but I do anyway.
I noticed that.
Yeah. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stories today. Who wants the first one?
I'll jump in on this one. I got it. All right. So
Red light.
What's interesting about this particular story we picked up is on Security Online Info, and we'll obviously post the links. Cybersecurity firm warns of actively exploited Windows IKE RCE.
So what does IKE mean? I know RCE is remote code execution.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Isn't that Tina's husband?
Ike. So IKE.
Ex-husband.
There's going to be a violent story, I can tell.
Oh.
Oh, no, IKE is the Internet Key Exchange. So IKE is used for IPsec. So anytime you're using an encrypted tunnel in some systems, whether it's a VPN or in sometimes just Windows networks, it could be using IKE. And there is a CVSS score 9.8. So it sounds like it's off the Richter scale.
Wow.
Where you can get a remote code execution. Now, here's the deal. There's been a lot of hype about this, but when you actually read through the exploit, like how this would be exploited, it's not easy.
So this is like if we found out there's a new version of the common cold that will instantly cause you to bleed from every orifice, but it only affects people with DNA, and there's only 8 people on the planet with that DNA.
Oh.
It's one of those things where it's possible, but it's not likely, but it's still but it's devastating if you get it.
I get it. So for 0.1% of people, it's going to be a 9.8.
Right.
Yes.
But I have a little bit of a bone to pick with the CVSS because I think it's a good score. It's a good thing, but we're missing one dimension, and that dimension is the widespreadness. How often? That's why when we talk, sometimes you'll hear Dwayne talk about the Shodan score. How often do we see this vulnerability? If it's something we can measure in the wild. This isn't one. This wouldn't have a Shodan score because it's not web based.
Well, no. So what's interesting about this one is they do talk about as part of this campaign. So they saw this actively in the wild. Okay, so that means there are people who are trying to exploit it. As part of the campaign, we noticed that Chinese threat actors are potentially colluding with Russian cyber criminals to try and exploit this. And typically then they pull up, well, how many people could be affected? And in this particular article, it says, we have confirmed that there is 1,000 plus systems vulnerable. And you go, that's a lot. But when you think about the global internet with billions of devices, this supports the statistic Patrick was talking about. I mean, really, it's a lot rarer than you would think. And it's because of the exploit path. I mean, there's a man in the middle involved here. There's all sorts of stuff that just, you probably don't need to worry about this. However, there was a patch already from Microsoft.
So this isn't low-hanging fruit for criminals.
No, God, no. Yeah, my criminal advice here would be avoid this one if you think this is going to pay out.
I honestly think this is probably nation state level stuff that if a nation state got a man in the middle, if they compromise. So the way this would work is like if you compromise somebody's Wi-Fi so that you can man in the middle of them. Okay, and they're an enterprise environment and they're using these technologies, then that might be a good way to do an RCE. But it's not like, grandma's web router.
No.
Well, who wants grandma's web router anyway? Are they going to get the cranberry nut muffin recipe for Christmas?
Cranberry nut sounds delicious.
Aunt June's always wanted that recipe.
Aunt B? How far back are we going?
Aunt B.
So Aunt June is Aunt B's evil rival.
Evil nemesis.
Wait, wasn't June Beaver's mom? I'm pretty sure.
Yes, you can't say Beaver on a podcast.
It's about nature, children. Nature.
different timelines.
All right. So the long and short of it is, yes, there's a possibility that you get hacked. And, RCEs are nasty. If somebody has a remote code executable exploit, they can get on your machine and just do whatever they want.
This is like someone saying, if you've got a, top tier, most powerful in the world industrial laser, don't look into it.
Yeah. Right.
It's rare. Well, it's just not that common. So I think it's super dangerous, but I think we need to think about.
You haven't met my Uncle Tommy, have you?
I'm gonna just shut the doors and assume it all went to plan.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
But hey, what's this? Laser pointer. Let me see how it looks. When you do
threat analysis. So here's something about threat analysis. So when you do threat analysis, you ask questions like, how easy is it for an attacker to carry this out? And the CVSS score is really good for that. It tells you that. How easy is it? If the system has the vulnerability, how easy is it? How devastating is it? That's also reflected in the CVSS.
Yes.
How likely is it to happen is not reflected in the CVSS.
There should be another rating for that, huh?
And we use things like Shodan, and that's why Dwayne dug up that statistic to find out, like, well, how many systems would this be? And it also makes a big difference if the default configuration of a common component is there. We're just not seeing that with this.
So you're saying you really don't have to worry about it, and we just wasted 9 minutes goofing
Yes,
around.
sir.
Well, no, but it's important. I mean, threat analysis is, so the problem is if you just go by the CVSS,
right?
It's the reason that this stuff isn't easy.
Right.
It's nuanced. So if you just go by the CVSS, yes, that's something you should pay attention to. But when you find out it only happens, to werewolves on moonless nights, then you can say, okay, I don't need to worry about that.
Need to meet my Uncle Tommy.
Okay.
All right. So let's move on to number 2. Google pushes emergency Chrome update to fix 8th 0 day of 2022.
Do you want to remind us whatever 0 day is, Dwayne?
Yeah. I can tell you what a 0 day is because I know when I listen to this dumb podcast.
you and your grandmother are the only ones.
Yeah, I know, right? 0 day.
Hi, Grandma.
A 0 day is an as yet unknown exploit.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Very good.
Yes, very nice. Unpatched.
And basically, it doesn't mean it's newly established. It just means it's newly known. Right. So there are some 0 days that are 10 to 15 years old, and they've been lurking, and bad guys don't want to disclose them, so they may be exploiting them long before they get disclosed. And so a 0 day is dangerous to the good guys.
Right.
So it looks like Google pushed an update, and Google Chrome updates every time you close and reload the browser. So that's good. But here's the thing. It's based on the Chromium engine, and Edge also uses the Chromium engine. So is Edge also vulnerable to this 0 day or all Chromium browsers, or was this confined to Google Chrome?
I don't know that, but I would say that if that were the case, you'd have to wait till the following Tuesday.
Yeah, and they say only Chrome users for now, so I don't know if that's just something custom they're doing. But.
And the patch came out on the 24th of November. So, if you use Chrome and you haven't patched, that's what you should do. Go restart Chrome, get the latest update, and make sure it's patching. And that's a good process to follow anyways. Make sure everything's patched.
And it came out on October 24th, so let us give thanks for Google.
Google. Thank you, Google.
Yes. Thank you, Google, for patching a vulnerability.
This is it, and this is there's a lot of terminology in here that's kind of neat, right? 0 day, we already know what that is. Buffer overrun, because this is a buffer overrun. So this is some variable was expecting a, input that was, let's say 16 characters and it was 22 characters, right? That's an overflow. So that's interesting. The other thing that's interesting, another terminology they mentioned here is the heap. So for those of you who are deep into computer programming and that sort of stuff, you know that the way your computer operates in memory, there's a space called the stack and a space called the heap. And the stack is where code executes, and the heap is kind of where memory is saved.
It's sort of global.
Yeah, this is an interesting overflow in the heap.
But you know what? I want to go further in that because I was confused about this for a long time as a programmer. This all happens within the context of a process in the operating system, which when you run an application, ever since Windows NT, when you run an application, it runs in this isolated memory place called a process. And when you talk about the stack and the heap, those run within the context of that process. So it's not like you're reaching out into other programs and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And
so the heap, global memory, the stack, local memory, where it's like a cafeteria tray stack, where you basically put a cafeteria tray down on the stack and then you tag your buddy, and your buddy comes and picks up the stack. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's how variables are passed from functions to functions, that kind of thing. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, and heap exploits are not super easy, although there's so many stack protections now. I think you see a lot of the buffer overflows moving into heap exploitation. But
okay,
so pretty common. But yeah, Google is on top of these things and has patched. So like Patrick and Carl has said, if you have Chrome open and you're like half of my family members and you leave it open for like 4 months with a bazillion tabs,
close it.
Every once in a while, close it and patch it.
Close it, reopen it.
Exactly. Yep. Close it, reopen it.
How about reboot that system every once in a while?
Right.
Hey, you know what? Every time you hear this show, right now, you're going to have to restart your phone. Right now. Go.
Do it. I, for one, I restart my system every day. I don't leave my systems on overnight unless they're servers.
My doctor told me to do that. Every day.
PC
Clean
doctor?
the pipes.
That's right.
Dr. Ruth, I think it was. All right. So this one's easy. Now, this one is really kind of disturbing. LastPass says hackers accessed customer data in a new breach. And Dwayne actually beat LastPass to my inbox. Dwayne posted this in our Slack channel before I got the email from LastPass saying, yeah, you know what? We kind of had this little thing called a breach, and your passwords are safe, but we just wanted you to know we screwed up.
Hey, that makes it sound like, Carl, I might have been the person who did the breach.
Did it really? Did I?
There's no proof of that.
Did I?
There's no proof of that. You can't prove it. LastPass, we keep pushing people, especially who listen to this podcast, actually anybody who will listen to me, that password managers are good, right? You should use password managers. And this breach, although it has gotten quite a bit of press time, password managers are still good. LastPass is still a good program.
Yeah.
Customers' passwords were not breached. Now, certain customer information might have been breached, but customer passwords are still fully encrypted. There's no way for LastPass to figure out what your password is, which means that there's no way for a hacker breaking into LastPass to figure out what your password is.
Right.
So there is a level of risk in having anyone have, and trusting any vendor. When you trust a vendor, you're giving them trust, and you can be betrayed by that. If you look at the architecture of these things, they do their best to not have the secrets so that they can't share the secrets.
Right.
So if you look at if you're willing to look at those architectures, that's great. I'm a Luddite in this regard. I use a password manager. I use an offline password manager.
It's called a
much
pen
less convenient.
And a pad.
It's much less convenient. And you'd have to breach multiple layers of security in order to get my stuff. But it works for me, and it means I don't have to think about these things. Eventually, I am thinking about switching to 1Password or LastPass, just because I know after all these breaches, I still know that the passwords have been safe.
Yeah.
But I would recommend to everyone who's not willing to do it themselves and really be inconvenienced, they should be using one of those two products. Now, maybe there's other products. There's probably plenty of other products I've heard of. Those are the two mainstream ones.
Pat, are you banging the table? Are you so excited that you're banging the table? Bang, bang, bang.
Yes, he's so excited. Keep hitting it.
I know that's a podcast move, right? Bang the table.
Yeah.
I'm going to take my shoe off and do a
Definitely do that.
A Khrushchev. But the average user, if you're not a security expert and you're not willing to torture yourself with very inconvenient systems to do this, you need to use one of these programs.
Yeah,
sure.
It's kind of weird to be saying that after we just said they got breached, but
I know. And that's one of the reasons I explicitly wanted to talk about it, because I know, a lot of our listeners probably use LastPass, and it still is a really great program. And passwords weren't breached, and that's the way they should be architecting it. So, I'd say you still use them. Better than not.
So have you looked at the architecture for these two products? Because I know you evaluated them back in the day when you picked one.
Yes. Yeah. So I have, and they're both very similar in what they do. There used to be offline stores that you could actually break into and grab password information from. Like, let's say you installed the desktop app for 1Password. It used to be that there were certain ways that you could actually crack those passwords and that sort of stuff, but it was super rare, and it was super older versions of it. I haven't seen anything, within the last 3 years, 4 years. That's anything like that.
So that's not for lack of trying.
No, because every time we break into an organization and we find, they have one of these password managers installed, we're constantly looking like, hey, how could we actually extract passwords? And it's easier to grab passwords from Active Directory than it is from one of these password managers.
Dwayne tested, Carl approved.
Yeah, okay. Hey, speaking of non sequiturs, Britney Spears has just come out with an update to one of her hits. It's called Oops, LastPass Got Breached Again.
Aww.
That was a long walk.
I know. All right. So the long and short of it is, it makes good clickbait because you're obviously listening to this show. However, it's not that big a deal. Your passwords are safe. This happened last time. Like somebody got the code, and the code for decrypting stuff based on passwords and encryption is pretty boring. Unless you have the keys and you have a way to decrypt it, it's useless.
Right.
And those things are safe.
I mean, encryption's based on the idea that everyone knows what the process is to encrypt and decrypt. It's the keys that matter.
Right. Yeah, it's the keys that matter.
Until quantum comes out. And then it's all bets off, right?
Oh, you had to go and ruin a perfectly good notion.
Mine.
We were happy. We were playing outside. We were playing. We were eating dirt, and everything was fine. And then here comes Dwayne. Boom! Quantum. You're dead.
I know it's a touch point for Patrick.
Hey, it's. The latest news was they just came out with the most reflective glass ever, and they claim that a quantum computer helped them figure it out.
Wow.
But I can't seem to find a source for which computer. If I had to guess, they did a D-Wave optimization.
And they just scrape it off of Tom Selleck's sunglasses? Wouldn't that work?
Well, they're claiming that it's so reflective that it'll save 20% on AC costs in large buildings.
Wow.
You just can't see through it.
Yeah. And it feels a lot like concrete.
It's called steel, yeah.
It feels a lot like concrete.
It's called wool.
We got more 90s references than Magnum PI. All right. So Hyundai is in the news because there's a bug in their app that allows hackers, or even those who aren't hackers, pretty much anybody, to remotely unlock and start your car.
Oh, yeah.
Bummer.
These are actually kind of cool. These are really cool, actually.
Yeah,
these are wicked cool. All right. So if you take your phone and you route your phone through a proxy. Now,
wait, are you giving advice to criminals?
I am.
You are? Well,
yes.
You know what? We have to do this then.
It's criminal career advice.
I knew you were going to tell people how to do this.
Yes. So for all of you aspiring hackers, if you're ever looking for these types of exploits, this is an interesting exploit. So this is somebody downloaded the Hyundai app where you can go remote start someone's car. And they routed all of their phone's traffic through what's called a proxy. So you can actually inspect everything that's going back and forth. Think of every app on your phone almost as a web page. Because they pretty much are. They're all communicating usually over HTTP or HTTPS back to a backend server. Mm-hmm. So if you were to see all that traffic, well, then you could start manipulating it. And that's what this researcher did. They just captured all the traffic going between their phone and the server and said, this is weird. It looks like to validate whether my account should have access to start someone's car, all it uses is an email address.
Weren't they using HTTPS? Shouldn't this have been encrypted?
But if you post, if you man in the middle your own stuff, you can do that easily.
You get to see it.
Yeah.
Because they're looking for the format. They're not looking for the data. They're looking for what is the protocol? What is I send you this, you send me that.
Yeah, but if this and that are always gobbledygook, what do you know?
No, that's a great point, Carl. Actually, I really like this because let's say you set up a proxy. Like, and all a proxy is like I send my web request to this server. The server then makes the request on my behalf and sends it back. All I need to do on my phone is accept the SSL certificate for the proxy. And now you can see all the traffic.
Wow.
Because it is coming to you. It's just the first endpoint.
Exactly.
Once it hits that first endpoint on your client, it's decrypted.
Right.
And
So
you
now-
just pick the proxy as the decrypting point.
Oh, that's bad.
Right. So now the data between the proxy and the server is encrypted, and the data between you and the proxy is encrypted. But if you're sitting on the proxy, you can see all the data.
Aren't all VPNs proxies?
What?
Aren't they? Can ExpressVPN, who will never advertise on our show from now on, will they be able to decrypt everything that we send through them and perhaps sell it?
If you were to, well, so they know where you're going anyways, because they're actually your point of presence on the internet. But if they were to push down an authoritative certificate to your device, yes.
Does DuckDuckGo know what I'm searching for? Who do I trust, Dwayne? I'm really
100%.
confused.
Help me. So,
All right.
So let's say you wanted to discover what vulnerabilities might exist in a particular app like this one. They downloaded the Hyundai app. They routed their own traffic through their own proxy, saw all the requests.
Oh, so this is what they did to figure out what the app was
Exactly.
doing.
That's what I'm
Exactly.
talking about.
Yeah.
You say, okay, well, who cares? They can hack their own app, right? But what's neat is they saw, hey, every time I make a request to start a car, the only thing that gets sent out that validates I am who I am is my email address. That's it. So they said, well, what if I send a request with somebody else's email address? Because in the app, you can't do it. But if I see the traffic and I just mimic the traffic and send it along as somebody else's email address, and that's ultimately what they were able to do is send it as anybody in that.
This is a critical understanding that if I write a piece of software, and this is something a lot of people don't get and they need to understand. Let's do the analogy first. If I want to send an email as Carl, unless Carl's domain and his email server has some certain checks built into it, which most don't,
Right.
I can write a client and send an email as anyone in the world.
Yeah.
And there's ways to catch that, but they're not default. That's not the way the world typically works.
You want to hear something funny?
Sure.
Go ahead, finish your story, and then I got one for you.
So when I make a request from a browser, the browser identifies itself as this is who I am. I'm Chrome, I'm Edge, I'm whatever. But I can write a piece of software that says it's Chrome or Edge or whatever. And the other side has no way of knowing. It's catfishing. It's basically catfishing for code. And so what Dwayne's talking about is the proxy just pretends it's a browser that's accepted. And if the browser's not accepted, you just change that identity string. And that way you can see how the sausage is made.
Right.
And that's what we're talking about is how they developed figured out this vulnerability.
Yeah, they developed it to figure it out. All right. So my story is back in 94, I think it was. I was speaking on internet protocols, and I wrote a couple of books for John Wiley and Sons on these regular internet protocols. HTTP was one of them, but it was newer. FTP, SMTP, NNTP, POP3, those were old. And so I did a demo at a VBits conference, I think, of how to send, using sockets, how to send an email through an SMTP server. And of course, there was no protection. There was no, none. And so I did that. And, who is happy to meet you? This is the protocol, right? You connect and it'd say, who's this? And you say, Carl at Franklin's Net. And it's, hello, Carl, happy to meet you. And then you say, send email. And it says, okay, who to who? And you put whoever it is. But it didn't do any authentication whatsoever. And so I remember this horrified guy in the first row. He goes, you can just say whoever you are? And I'm like, yeah, isn't that great? Because I was loving the protocol, I wasn't thinking about security at all. And guess what? Neither was any of these people running email servers. There wasn't any kind of validation, verification, no authorization. This was before all of that.
Right.
So, yeah. But I was so excited. I'm like, yeah, isn't that awesome?
It's awesome.
I think it's awesome.
And then other people are running out of the room.
I know, exactly. This is how your email client works, folks.
When we first time we did a big session, like hundreds of people on SQL injection, we had people run out of the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's always eye-opening.
Yep. It always happens.
That was fun.
So bringing this back to Hyundai. So what they did is instead in the back end, if they submitted let's say Carl.
Of course.
They took your email address and submitted it to the backend API, they could unlock your car. And the way they found to do that is if they took your email address and added a special character at the end, which was a CRLF, right? Control line feed.
Right.
Which for those of you programmers, that's just an enter, right? So if you hit enter on your keyboard, it puts a CRLF at the end of a string.
CR13 LF10.
There you go. But
those ASCII codes.
The system, what would happen is you would send it would be fine. The system on the remote side would strip off the CRLF and go, oh, okay, this is your email address, and just would do it. So it gives you the ability to bypass it.
Yeah.
Somebody then wrote that entire thing in Python. So now you could just literally download a Python app, put in somebody's email address, hit enter, and if they have an account, it will go unlock their doors. So this is definitely something you want to be careful of. It has been patched since then, so not anything you need to worry about. There wasn't a breach of email addresses or passwords or anything like that. It was just had to do with the backend API.
But it's a cautionary tale for any car manufacturers that have apps.
Yes. So I'm glad you said that, because then they said, hey, what other apps are out there? And they found another app out there through SiriusXM where that
affects many cars.
Yeah. Acura, BMW, Honda, Hyundai, Infiniti, Jaguar, Land Rover, Lexus, Nissan, Subaru.
All right. Now you're hitting close to home.
Right. So the only validation it needs is the VIN number of your car.
Oh, I scratched that out long ago.
Just like the serial numbers on my weapons.
Yeah, we don't need no VIN number.
Which we all know is visible through the front windshield. Like,
not anymore.
So you could literally walk up to anybody's car you think has XM, Sirius XM satellite, and be like, hey, I'm going to borrow some of that.
So I have the service built into my radio, but I never activated it. So am I at risk?
So that is a really good question. So are you at risk right now? No. They're actually looking at patching this already. So I think this has already been patched. Were you at risk before? I don't know that you were. But
if the car, I don't think that I haven't read this, but I would think that if the car's not configured, you're fine.
No, an unauthorized request only contained the target's name, phone number, address, and vehicle details. So that would have been what was leaked. If you didn't have a subscription, I don't know that they would have any of that information.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Plus, I still have my car,
which is important.
Yeah,
it's good.
Did I ever tell you the story of the day I thought my car was stolen?
No.
Let me start by saying, and we have time, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me start by saying my car's paid off. Okay.
Okay.
But just before it wasn't, and about 6 months before it wasn't, I come down in the morning, and about noon after coffee and stuff.
Is this a Repo Man story?
Kelly says to me, my wife, she says, hey, when are you going to go downtown and get your car? And I said, car's in the driveway. She goes, no, it's not. I say, yes, it is. She goes, no, it's not. And I look and it's not there. And now I'm thinking, what the heck happened? Because sometimes I had a proclivity to go downtown and imbibe a little too much and leave my car down there and Uber home. It's only like a 10-minute ride.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
as is
responsible thing
That's
to do.
Exactly
children.
right. Yes. That's exactly right. So I don't drive drunk. And so anyway, we get in the car and I'm freaking out, and we go down and look around and it's not there anywhere. Finally, I call the police and I say, okay, I want to report a theft and blah, blah, blah. Okay, what's the address? And I give them my address and they go, we had a repo there this morning. What? So the reason it was repossessed. You were right, Patrick. But the reason it was repossessed is for lack of payment. Now, here's the story. When I bought this, I bought it through a company, and my secretary set up automatic payments from a bank account. And then the secretary left a couple of years ago. And so we had no way, and they were sending her the messages by email. Hey, this, car is past due, whatever. And then we just, didn't think about it.
No notifications.
Right? No notifications. Out of sight, out of mind. All of a sudden, where's your car? Dude, where's my car?
Wow.
So that happened.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I only had a few payments left and I paid it in full and we were done.
Nice.
And now I own my car.
one of my kids borrowed my car and went to Boston and parked it near their school, and the car got stolen. And then when I went down to see, I saw that it was a no parking area, and I called the police, and it had been towed. So
not quite stolen.
She learned about parking at that point.
Okay, what's next? Android. Bugs. Never heard of them.
Nah.
Critical RCE bugs in Android remote keyboard apps with 2M installs, 2 million installs. What's this all about?
This is interesting. I mean, so we all love emojis and custom keyboards and all sorts of stuff. You just got to be careful I just use the ones that come with the phone. Apparently, a lot of people like to download new custom keyboards for their phones and use those instead. You got to be careful where these things come from because they're not necessarily always as secure as they probably should be.
Or they might even be malware.
Yeah, that's the easiest kind of malware to do. Hey, use this keyboard instead of your own. What could you do with a keyboard? Let's see. If you're the primary way that people input passwords, let's say.
But that's not what this is. This is that three well-known. I don't think they're well-known. They're well used,
well-ish and known.
And they have similar vulnerabilities, not the same vulnerabilities. At first, when I first started hearing about this, I thought these have to be written by the same people,
right? No,
and it's just they're doing it under different names so that they can get more revenue.
So you're saying there's 3 different apps that all do the same thing?
There are.
Okay.
Yeah. So you've got Lazy Mouse is one of them. So Lazy Mouse flaw allows an attacker to perform a man-in-the-middle attack, which means they're actually on your wireless or on your network, to read all your key presses. Now, imagine this. I install an app on my phone so that I can use my desktop keyboard to type on it, right, to make it easier. Well, the protocol they're sending those types back and forth is clear text. Developer just didn't have an eye towards security. You just always need to be careful whenever you install something that's going to allow remote access, or even one of those downloadable keyboards, because you don't know what data is being sent back and forth. I mean, every time you type on your keyboard, it always does a look ahead and search sometimes for whether you're spelling things correctly and that sort of stuff. Is that going over HTTP or HTTPS? You just got to be careful. So there's a number of them listed.
Or going someplace you wouldn't want it to go.
Right.
Okay.
So this is a more along the lines I don't download an app if I don't need it. If I don't absolutely need it, I don't download an app because it's just bloatware and it's the reputation. You need to figure out who's making it, whether they have craftsmanship, that kind of thing, and that's all a lot of work. So I just avoid. I use the default stuff. That's one thing. But if you do use these, it's hard to actually know whether they're following good development hygiene, and they're not. That's what this conclusion is this authentication and doing secure apps is not trivial. It's not easy. It's certainly not easy if you want to plug it in after the fact. If you develop the software, building in the security after the fact is like trying to put sprinklers in a building after it's been built. It's much more expensive. It's much harder. There's many more shortcuts you're going to have to take. And most of these companies are in it just to make a quick buck on the App Store. They don't care about security until somebody points it out. And it is also worth noting that in the story it said that they couldn't get them to respond. They never responded to inquiries about this stuff.
Yeah, and honestly, not surprising. If you just threw an app out there with that and an eye towards security or whatnot, just wanted to put an app up on the store, you're probably not going to be responding to fixing it either. So
probably not. And speaking of Android, Patrick, you want this one?
Oh, yes. Yeah, this was the one I wanted to talk about. So
this is Patrick's thing.
This is from ZDNet. Google warns that Android's patch gap is leaving these smartphones vulnerable to attack. So what's the patch gap?
Never mind.
Patch man.
Stop. Oh, you got to hit the pause button if you want to stop.
So what's this all mean?
Yeah.
If we compare and contrast Apple phones and Android phones, Apple knows what their update schedule is. They know what their plan is. They know what they're going to add to their operating system. And it's always going to be supported by the hardware for some period of time. So if you buy an iPhone, then 3 years from now, they're not going to release an operating system if they can help it that's going to make that iPhone, obsolete. That's
Right.
not going to be able to take the patches. Eventually they're going to, because they're going to be beyond their time horizon. Unfortunately, this happens far, far more often with Android because Google's not revealing everything that they're going to build to all of the people who are making handsets that are running Android.
Right.
So you may buy an Android phone, and less than a year later, there might be an update from Android, from Google, and it's not compatible. It can't take that because they didn't build something in, or they didn't know something would be compatible. So now you're stuck. You're on that old version of Android, and you probably want to keep the phone for another couple of years, but you're falling behind. You're not getting patches, and that's called the patch gap.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's a big problem. And it's one of the reasons why, if we are in an enterprise and we're trying to go after a device as part of an engagement, we're much happier to see Android than we are to see Apple. And that's why I carry an Apple device as well.
Yep.
I don't love everything about it, but I do like the security. And that's a big reason.
Well, they have control.
Right.
Yeah.
They have control, whereas Google is the kind of the Wild West.
Right.
Android. Yeah. All right. So I guess what we're saying is ditch that Android phone and get an iPhone.
Heck yeah.
I'll go along with that.
If security is a top priority, unfortunately, I have to keep advising people. When people say, well, which is more secure, Apple or Android?
Wait. How about which ones don't explode?
Well, yeah.
That's a good quality. I
That's
like
still Apple.
non-explosive.
Right.
I like a good explosion every once in a while.
Yeah, but not on my phone. Not while I'm talking on it.
I like to be able to target it.
Now, well, it's in
Yeah,
your
right.
pocket.
Here, hold my phone.
Pull pin, throw phone. Well,
So I guess that's it. That's a show. Hey, thanks for listening,
so.
everybody. And
Thanks,
follow
guys.
us on Mastodon. I know Dwayne and I are there. Patrick hasn't
Yes, sir.
gone there
I'm
yet.
slowly plodding that way.
I honestly still think we need to set up a Mastodon server.
I think we should.
We should set up a Mastodon server, and we should also have a Mastodon account. Not
but
just
after
our
listening to
personal
us,
accounts.
would anyone
Yes.
trust it?
All right, guys. Talk to you
See you
later.
later.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.